Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 103 of the Prancing Pony podcast, where Frodo finally sells Bag End.
And good news, folks, the last bottles of the Old Wynyards were not included in the sale.
Well, that's only good news if you're not a Sackville Baggins.
That's true. That is true. Sackville Bagginses don't listen to us.
No,
but,
they don't.
Folks, we'll head over to the common room in just a moment. But first, I'm Sean Marchese, the real-life Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the man of the West, who seems to think he's been given all the heaviest stuff, Alan Sisto.
Thanks a lot, Sean. I assume your packet is quite light, then?
Oh, it's great. It's breezy walk.
Breezy walk. Well, folks, today we join Frodo, Sam, and Pippin for a long night's breezy walk through the heart of the Shire.
You know, it's hard to believe that this perilous quest to destroy the One Ring starts with just a peaceful little stroll through lovely lands of the Shire.
You're not kidding. I mean, Mordor it ain't, that's for sure.
No, we're a long way from Mordor still, thankfully. But
yeah.
That doesn't mean we can't peek over at the other side of the map once in a while to see what's happening over there, does it?
No.
You know what that means. It's time for Meanwhile Elsewhere in Middle-earth.
Yay!
And we got such a great response from our listeners the first time we did this segment, and I'm really happy about that because, Alan, both you and I thought it was a cool idea, and it's great to hear that we were right about that.
Well, we do love hearing when we get something right for a change.
Yeah, you're not kidding. We won't get used to it, but we will be doing this new segment every chance we get because you folks seem to like it. So, a couple of pages into this chapter, there's a passage, which Alan is going to be reading a little bit later, in which the narrator says that Gandalf stayed in the Shire for over 2 months. Then one evening, at the end of June, soon after Frodo's plan had been finally arranged, he suddenly announced that he was going off again next morning. Well, Frodo asks him why, and Gandalf says, "I've heard something that has made me anxious and needs looking into." But he's really cagey about it. He doesn't say what news he's heard, at least not yet.
Well, typical Gandalf.
Of course. But we've read ahead, haven't we? And we've read the appendices. So we know that at the beginning of this chapter, June of the Third Age, 3018, which is the year 1418 in the Shire, Meanwhile, Elsewhere in Middle-earth, Appendix B, The Tale of Years, tells us that on June 20th, Sauron attacked Osgiliath.
Yeah.
And about the same time, Thranduil was attacked, and Gollum escaped from his halls where he was being held.
That's right. We get more detail on the Council of Elrond, which we'll get to in a year. Boromir was at Osgiliath when it was attacked, and he tells the council, "This very year, in the days of June, sudden war came upon us out of Mordor, and we were swept away. We were outnumbered, for Mordor has allied itself with the Easterlings and the cruel Haradrim. But it was not by numbers that we were defeated. A power was there that we have not felt before. Some said that it could be seen, like a great black horseman, a dark shadow under the moon. Wherever he came, a madness filled our foes, but fear fell on our boldest, so that horse and man gave way and fled. Only a remnant of our eastern force came back, destroying the last bridge that still stood amid the ruins of Osgiliath. I was in the company that held the bridge until it was cast down behind us. 4 only were saved by swimming, my brother and myself and 2 others. But still we fight on, holding all the west shores of Anduin, and those who shelter behind us give us praise, if ever they hear our name. Much praise, but little help."
Well, I can't wait to get to that scene.
Boy, a nice little dig at the end. But that's going to be...
Quite.
Council of Elrond, I think we figured out that's going to be like 5 episodes, maybe?
Probably something like that at the rate we're going,
Folks, season 4 will be the Council of Elrond.
Yep. Right. Yes, that very poorly run committee meeting, according to Tom Shippey.
Oh, yes. Well said.
But so that's the attack on Osgiliath. Well, soon after Boromir speaks, Legolas speaks up about the attack on Mirkwood and Gollum's escape. He says, "In the days of fair weather we led Gollum through the woods, and there was a high tree standing alone far from the others which he liked to climb. Often we let him mount up to the highest branches until he felt the free wind, but we set a guard at the tree's foot. One day he refused to come down, and the guards had no mind to climb after him. He had learned the trick of clinging to boughs with his feet as well as with his hands, so they sat by the tree far into the night. It was that very night of summer, yet moonless and starless, that orcs came on us at unawares. We drove them off after some time. They were many and fierce, but they came from over the mountains, and were unused to the woods. When the battle was over, we found that Gollum was gone, and his guards were slain or taken. It then seemed plain to us that the attack had been made for his rescue, and that he knew of it beforehand. How that was contrived we cannot guess, but Gollum is cunning, and the spies of the enemy are many."
Well, and the elves are just apparently not very good jailers. I mean, they even let 13
No, they let
dwarves get out of
13
the...
dwarves and one invisible hobbit get out. Of course, he wasn't technically in a cell, so there's that.
That's right, yeah. You may think we're done, but we're not.
You'd like to think that, wouldn't you?
Thanks, Vizzini. Unfinished Tales offers a little more detail in The Hunt for the Ring that tells us plainly that these two attacks occurring at around the same time was no accident. It was a carefully orchestrated 1-2 punch by Sauron. Now, few could withstand even one of these fell creatures, he's talking about the ring wraiths, and as Sauron deemed, none could withstand them when gathered together under their terrible captain, the Lord of Morgul. Yet this weakness they had for Sauron's present purpose. So great was the terror that went with them, even invisible and unclad, that their coming forth might soon be perceived, and their mission be guessed by the wise. So it was that Sauron prepared 2 strokes, in which many after saw the beginnings of the War of the Ring. They were made together. The orcs assailed the realm of Thranduil with orders to recapture Gollum, and the Lord of Morgul was sent forth openly to battle against Gondor. These things were done towards the end of June 3018. Thus Sauron tested the strength and preparedness of Denethor, and found them more than he had hoped. But that troubled him little, since he had used little force in the assault, and his chief purpose was that the coming forth of the Nazgul should appear only as part of his policy of war against Gondor. Therefore, when Osgiliath was taken and the bridge broken, Sauron stayed the assault, and the Nazgul were ordered to begin the search for the ring.
Wow, so that makes it really clear that these two attacks were just a feint. It was just a way of making the wise, Gandalf, Elrond, Galadriel, and so on.
Well, you mean it's not Sam and Ted and, and the gaffer? And...
No, not quite.
No? That's what I was picturing.
No, they basically make the Council of the Wise think that Sauron was starting his war now, and that he had released the ring wraiths just to attack Gondor.
Attack Gondor, exactly. And that's the news that Gandalf's hearing when I get to that passage later on. So no wonder it made him anxious, and he had to look into it.
Yeah, and of course not realizing, at least not yet, that as soon as the ring wraiths had actually taken Osgiliath, Sauron redirected them to their real mission, to hunt for the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they'll be catching up with us later on in this chapter. But first, I guess we have to start this chapter. So, Alan, why don't we begin Three is Company?
That's a good idea. Sean, where should we begin the chapter?
Well, I've heard that the beginning is a very good place to start.
Indeed, I've heard the same thing, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. It never gets old, Sean. It got old 3 years ago, but it's still funny.
But we're still beating that dead horse.
Yeah. Oh, well, we beat so many dead horses around
we
here.
Do. Yes.
So,
there's
so many. All right. Yeah. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and start over.
Outtake.
So here we go. You ought to go quietly, and you ought to go soon, said Gandalf. 2 or 3 weeks had passed, and still Frodo made no sign of getting ready to go. I know, but it is difficult to do both, he objected. If I just vanish like Bilbo, the tale will be all over the Shire in no time. Of course you mustn't vanish, said Gandalf. That wouldn't do at all. I said soon, not instantly. If you can think of any way of slipping out of the Shire without its being generally known, it will be worth a little delay. But you must not delay too long. What about the autumn, on or after our birthday? Asked Frodo. I think I could probably make some arrangements by then. Short but sweet.
Yeah, that's a great passage, great place to start. We get a nice passage of time since the previous chapter. Gandalf's been there for 2 or 3 weeks.
I mean, Frodo knows he's got to go. He's made the decision. I have to leave. I have to take the ring with me, and Sam's going to come. But he hasn't done anything about actually, going.
No.
So.
No, he doesn't. It's hard. It's hard for him to leave, Gandalf's advice, do it without, let's see, where is it? Do it quietly.
Right.
And then, but don't vanish. That would do it all. That probably be the opposite of quiet, actually, to vanish again, just like Bilbo did. Do it without generally being known. And
exactly. Let's avoid a repeat of that incident.
Yeah. So, a short delay is okay if it's, if it's secret,
Right. Yeah.
Take the time to get out quietly. That'll be better than getting out instantly.
On or after our birthday. So he's talking about, late September. We know that the earlier conversation was in probably now May. We're approaching the end of spring, approaching the beginning of summer. And Frodo's
Probably
basically
something
saying,
like
"Can
that.
I have another 5 months?" Is what he's asking,
Basically,
really.
yeah. Give me a few months, please.
I know it's been a couple weeks. Can I have a few more months?
I think I could probably make some arrangements by then. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, he does need to come up with a plan because he does need to find a way to make this.
He doesn't want to just whiz bang disappear. Yeah.
Exactly. Hobbits don't do that. And so if he did that, it would raise suspicion. It would raise alarm. So he's right to say it's going to take some time. And, right now it's a buyer's market, and he's going to have to compete with other cash buyers. He's got, every offer he's going to put, he's going to have to, offer above asking price. It's
a terrible time to sell your Hobbit hole.
Yeah, it really is, apparently. And it's a great time probably to sell it, but it's a bad time for him to buy, is what I'm thinking. It's going to be hard for him to find that replacement home, right? Then again, his home is at the high end of the market, so it's probably going to move real slowly, spend a lot of time, on the market.
Well,
at least 90 days before he's going to get any reasonable offers.
Yeah.
So. All right, now that we've beat that to an unrecognizable pulp, I have a passage for you to read about Bag End and about his plan to leave.
All right. To tell the truth, he was very reluctant to start, now that it had come to the point. Bag End seemed a more desirable residence than it had for years, and he wanted to savor as much as he could of his last summer in the Shire. When autumn came, he knew that part at least of his heart would think more kindly of journeying, as it always did at that season. He had indeed privately made up his mind to leave on his 50th birthday, Bilbo's 128th. It seemed somehow the proper day on which to set out and follow him. Following Bilbo was uppermost in his mind, and the one thing that made the thought of leaving bearable. He thought as little as possible about the ring and where it might lead him in the end. But he did not tell all his thoughts to Gandalf. What the wizard guessed was always difficult to tell.
That last little bit really is telling. I don't blame Frodo necessarily, but I do feel like, hey, Gandalf's here to help you. And the fact that you're intentionally being a little less than transparent is a little bit troubling, I have to say. We noticed that earlier. Remember when he didn't say anything about Gandalf looking more careworn? He just said, yeah, you look good too, man. I mean, he's kind of...
And that was just kind of a polite... polite nothing. But you're right. There is something a little bit more sinister about this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe sinister's taking it too far. It's this, I don't know. It's something like he's still not fully trusting Gandalf to be the helper that he needs, to be the counsel that he needs. I feel like he's kind of, I'll deal with this on my own. I'm not going to let him know what I'm thinking right now.
Oh, that's interesting.
Why not? Why would you not let him in? But yeah,
that's interesting. I don't know. I was thinking maybe it's the kind of the ring, maybe
could be
kind of seeding some distrust of Gandalf.
That's absolutely quite possible.
Maybe that's what it is. That's kind of what I'm thinking about. Something sinister. I mean, it's not like Frodo really has anything to hide here at this point. But yeah, maybe the ring is just kind of sowing some discord.
Well, yeah, I mean, but he could have said to Frodo, he could have said to Gandalf, I'm thinking that I'm going to leave on our birthday. That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? That's when Bilbo left. I'm going to leave then.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not telling him. And I don't know. There's part of me that kind of like looks at Frodo like, what are you thinking? Why are you so hesitant to do this? But Gandalf's like, all right, fine, whatever. That's fine, but it can't be any later.
Right.
And again, don't let anybody know what you're doing, where you're going. Sam had better not say anything. Frodo really doesn't even know where he's going. He's got no specific plans. He knows he has to leave, and that's really as far as he's gotten in terms of his specific plans. But I'm going to go ahead and pick up there, and we'll see that conversation between him and Gandalf.
All right.
I have been so taken up with the thoughts of leaving Bag End and of saying farewell that I have never even considered the direction, said Frodo. For where am I to go, and by what shall I steer? Mordor, Gandalf, is it left or right? Sorry.
It's hard not to think of that, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's not from this moment in the movie, but it sure is feeling like that same thing. I don't know where it is.
Right.
But as he says, what is to be my quest? Bilbo went to find a treasure, there and back again. But I go to lose one, and not return as far as I can see. But you cannot see very far, said Gandalf. Neither can I. It may be your task to find the cracks of doom, but that quest may be for others. I do not know. At any rate, you are not ready for that long road yet. "No, indeed," said Frodo. "But in the meantime, what course am I to take?" "Towards danger, but not too rashly, not too straight," answered the wizard. "If you want my advice, make for Rivendell. That journey should not prove too perilous, though the road is less easy than it was, and it will grow worse as the year fails." "Rivendell," said Frodo. "Very good. I will go east, and I will make for Rivendell. I will take Sam to visit the elves. He will be delighted." He spoke lightly, but his heart was moved suddenly with the desire to see the house of Elrond Half-Elven and breathe the air of that deep valley where many of the fair folk still dwelt in peace. Ah.
Wow.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry for my small departure. I mean, it really is one of those Mordor Gandalf left or right. He doesn't literally have a clue as to where to go.
No, he's really just setting out on like blind faith, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
he knows he has to leave, and that's all he's planning on doing at this point.
Yeah. I mean, and I would say that, maybe he's just setting out because he trusts Gandalf, and I guess he does to a point, but I mean, we've talked about the fact that maybe he doesn't fully, so it's interesting. I mean, he's just kind of like, he's just going on nothing. He's steering on nothing.
So Gandalf gives him some great advice.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to go back, though, to the first paragraph of this, the line where he says that Bilbo went to find a treasure there and back again, referencing the title of the book.
That's brilliant, yep.
But I go to lose one and not return as far as I can see. That really makes me think of something that we covered in the last episode, the line where he talked about that he'd imagined going away as a kind of holiday, but that this would mean exile, a flight from danger into danger, drawing it after me. He's making this really clear contrast multiple times now with Bilbo's journey and his journey, and he realizes just how vastly different his is going to be. Yeah. Or at least that his could be. He, as Gandalf points out, I don't know whether that
he doesn't know where it's all going to end just yet. Nobody knows that yet. But yeah, even setting out, his goal is very different from Bilbo's is, and he realizes that. Yeah, and I think Frodo's got so much wisdom, I think. He does. Frodo starts out wiser than I think Bilbo does.
Oh, yeah. Bilbo had a naivete that was charming and hilarious and cute, but not helpful, to put it mildly. Right. And Frodo really, I think, has learned from that. I think he's gained a lot of wisdom from Bilbo's experience. And then, of course, I think some of it's clearly just inherent in his personality. He's very different from Bilbo in terms of his just the way he speaks and the way his thought process works. He's very different, but he still has some of those amazing Hobbit characteristics that are wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to go ahead and move on, and I'm going to have you read here. So we learn first that breaking news in Hobbiton. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just received word from Bag End. We have a reporter on the way, but in the meantime, we've just heard that Frodo Baggins has sold Bag End.
It is an interesting. You get kind of a tone shift, don't you?
Don't you? Yeah, absolutely.
We talked about how the first chapter of this book is so light. It's that tone. It's sort of that hobbity tone. Yeah. And then chapter 2, Shadow of the Past, is just. I mean, it is. You're full into like that's like late Lord of the Rings, high mythic style. Yeah. And this chapter starts in that same hard, kind of dark, grim place. Yeah. But then after the section break, it kind of goes back to that hobbity tone, that sillier tone.
Yeah, exactly. Which is exactly what you get at the Ivy Bush and the Green Dragon.
Yep, exactly. All right. I've got a couple paragraphs in here, so I'll start there. Mm-hmm. Just why Mr. Frodo was selling his beautiful hole was even more debatable than the price. A few held the theory, supported by the nods and hints of Mr. Baggins himself, that Frodo's money was running out. He was going to leave Hobbiton and live in a quiet way on the proceeds of the sale down in Buckland among his Brandybuck relations. As far from the Sackville Bagginses as may be, some added. But so firmly fixed had the notion of the immeasurable wealth of the Bagginses of Bag End become that most found this hard to believe, harder than any other reason or unreason that their fancy could suggest. To most, it suggested a dark and yet unrevealed plot by Gandalf. Though he kept himself very quiet and did not go about by day, it was well known that he was hiding up in the Bag End. But however a removal might fit in with the designs of his wizardry, there was no doubt about the fact. Frodo Baggins was going back to Buckland.
Frodo Baggins going back to Buckland. I love the notion, by the way, that Gandalf is, another conspiratorial plot. Every time they see Gandalf, they think he's up to something, don't they?
He's the disturber of the peace. He's taking people off into the blue.
Blue. Yeah. It must be him. And you'd think that maybe if that's the picture you're getting, maybe he should have just gone around during the day. Hello, everyone. I'm Gandalf. How are you today?
Would anyone like to be whisked off into the blue for mad adventures?
Anybody any volunteers for the blue?
He could hand out business cards. Remember our Gandalf business
I do.
cards?
That's exactly what you reminded me of when you said that. I'm like, I need to dig that graphic out and put that back on the website one of these days or on our Facebook page. That's a fun thing. Oh goodness.
But we see this Hobbit rumor mill, don't we?
Yeah.
They
Immediately. They're
rumors.
So good at that. So good at that. And they even speculate about that it must have been a bargain price. And that, with them selling it to Lobelia, we do get the somewhat sad news that Otho had died some years before.
Yeah.
You feel a little badly for him, but not too badly.
But there's still some snark in that sentence at the ripe disappointed age of 102.
Disappointed. You just see him on his deathbed. Oh, Lobelia, I'm still so mad about the fact we didn't get Bag End.
Yep.
Why that Mr. Bilbo and that Frodo? I'm just going to... he could have said goodbye, I love you, whatever. No, he's just griping about
never getting Bag End.
And never getting to be Sackville
Baggins, like the patriarch of two clans. Yeah.
Right.
Baggins,
right.
Sackville Baggins.
The myth of Baggins' wealth, which of course is much like the legend of the rent. Once again, they feel like this is, there's no way he could possibly be out of money. Now, we've talked about Bilbo leaving possibly because he was out of money, and just a couple episodes ago, certainly not unreasonable to think that Frodo has run through whatever is left of that wealth. Mm-hmm. After all,
right.
This is now 17 years later. And so now the treasure is some 77 years old.
If, as our listener Ed pointed out a couple of episodes ago, especially if there wasn't really that much to begin with.
Yeah, if it was only that, like 6 or 7 years of salary, that's not much.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, we noticed that this was a concept that was in the story for a long time, wasn't it? The idea of him running out of money.
Yeah, and that kind of makes me think like that really is part of what's going on here.
Yeah.
Tolkien had never really abandoned that idea.
Yeah.
But the move to Buckland, of course, that's going to make the journey east shorter since it's on the eastern borders of the Shire, or the eastern marches, as I might say.
And it certainly makes sense since he lived there in his childhood.
Absolutely.
So
makes total
it's
sense.
A believable cover story.
Yeah. And credibility is important.
Yeah.
So then I'm going to go ahead and pick up right after that. Once that decision was made, Gandalf stayed in the Shire for over 2 months. Then one evening at the end of June, soon after Frodo's plan had been finally arranged, he suddenly announced that he was going off again next morning. "Only for a short while, I hope," he said. "But I'm going down beyond the southern borders to get some news if I can. I have been idle longer than I should." He spoke lightly, but it seemed to Frodo that he looked rather worried. "Has anything happened?" he asked. "Well, no, but I have heard something that has made me anxious and needs looking into. If I think it necessary, after all, for you to get off at once, I shall come back immediately, or at least send word. In the meanwhile, stick to your plan, but be more careful than ever, especially of the ring. Let me impress on you once more, don't use it." That's pretty important. Don't use it.
Quite.
Don't.
Yeah.
Just absolutely.
Just period. Do not use it.
End of story. Not.
Yeah.
Don't, try not to use it, or don't use it unless it's really important.
Right. Don't use it for any purpose that will arouse suspicion, nothing like that.
Right.
Just don't
use it. Don't even do what Bilbo used to do, which is like hide from Lobelia. This is don't use the ring.
Yep.
And of course we talked about what he was looking into during our opening segment about Elsewhere in Middle Earth. So there's that.
Yep.
But yeah, at least we get the timeline. The plans are finalized, and it's interesting. He finds this out. I wonder how he found it out.
Oh,
could he have possibly met with Aragorn at some point? Do you think? I mean, I've heard something that's made me anxious and needs looking into. I don't know.
Maybe he met with Aragorn. Maybe he.
Radagast sent a message by bird. I mean, you never know. It could have been anything, I guess. He is a wizard after all, so he must have something, some
he has some way of getting news for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm trying to, as you're saying that, I'm trying to think, is that written anywhere? Was that in Unfinished Tales or anything like that? But
I don't think so.
I think I've seen it.
I could be
Maybe
wrong.
We'll look into that for postscript or something like that. But
maybe if there's anything there,
I don't think there's really there. I don't think there may not be anything.
There may not be. But... Now he intends to come back, and he makes it very clear. I'll come back right away if I need to. Yeah, he has no idea what he's getting into. He doesn't realize that he's going into a risky situation. He thinks that he'll have the ability to come back.
Right.
He does talk about getting word back, and of course he does, though the word doesn't get to him. Hey, Bartleman, we got to chat. You know,
I know he's gotten better about getting us the mail, but he was not very good at getting Frodo the mail.
Only a little.
only a little tiny bit. It takes a while, but it usually makes its way to us.
Yeah. So the plans continue, and Frodo, I have to say, I wish we could have read this, so I'm going to read part of it. I just love this line. The Shire had seldom seen so fair a summer, or so rich an autumn. The trees were laden with apples, honey was dripping in the combs, and the corn was tall and full. That's just beautiful.
That is beautiful.
Isn't it? I just love it. Absolutely beautiful. And it makes it harder for him to leave, doesn't it?
It sure does. It's like, oh man, this is like the best summer we've seen, and the best autumn we've seen in forever, and I have to leave now. It just twists the knife in Frodo's heart.
It does.
That he's got to leave.
Oh, and another reminder that corn is not maize, just to make sure we are clear on that.
Corn is grain.
We talked about that back in The Hobbit, if I remember correctly, didn't we?
Yeah, corn is just a word meaning the main cereal crop of an area. So in this case, it's probably something like barley or wheat or maybe oats. Probably barley or wheat, though.
Yeah, I'm thinking just with the height. If they're talking about it being full, it would probably be wheat or barley.
Yeah.
Okay. They're getting near the birthday, and I love that it's capitalized. Even when Frodo said it earlier, our birthday, both our and birthday were capitalized.
That's cool.
Just conveying the significance of the date. And it is a big one. I mean, it's the joint birthday for Frodo and Bilbo. It's the day that Bilbo left. It's the day that Frodo became the heir. I mean, it's all very significant stuff.
And we see here, although we're not reading these couple of paragraphs, we see Frodo's anxiety kind of mounting, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
We see so many references to Gandalf still hasn't come.
Yeah, you're right. You're
the day drew
absolutely
near,
right.
and still he did not come. We get next day, Frodo became really anxious and kept a constant lookout for Gandalf. We really are going to see this like 5 or 6 times in the next couple of paragraphs. It's going to be repeated that Gandalf still has not shown up. It's almost like you can see Frodo like constantly watching the door.
Yeah.
Hoping Gandalf shows up.
Chomping on his fingernails.
Yeah.
Worried about where's Gandalf?
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to go ahead and let you read those lines.
All right. Thursday, his birthday morning, dawned as fair and clear as it had long ago for Bilbo's great party. Still Gandalf did not appear. In the evening, Frodo gave his farewell feast. It was quite small, just a dinner for himself and his 4 helpers. But he was troubled and felt in no mood for it. The thought that he would so soon have to part with his young friends weighed on his heart. He wondered how he would break it to them. The 4 younger hobbits were, however, in high spirits, and the party soon became very cheerful in spite of Gandalf's absence. The dining room was bare except for a table and chairs, but the food was good, and there was good wine. Frodo's wine had not been included in the sale to the Sackville Bagginses. Whatever happens to the rest of my stuff when the SBs get their claws on it, at any rate I have found a good home for this, said Frodo as he drained his glass. It was the last drop of Old Wynyards.
Yeah.
Going out in style.
That's right. If I have to leave, I'm taking this with me.
That's right. Yep.
Oh,
so cool.
Goodness.
And again, just kind of a fun moment. It's the kind of thing that really is not meaningful in the...
No, there's not a lot of thematic material here.
Right. But it's just great to see this kind of this lighthearted spirit. We get to see Frodo enjoying some company with his friends before he leaves. He has been very anxious that Gandalf hasn't shown up, but he has this nice moment with his friends, and I love that. They get to stick it to the Sackville Bagginses one more time.
Which is always
a couple more
thing.
times, actually.
That's right. I said there wasn't a lot of thematic material, and it's true, there's not a lot, but there is a little bit. This does remind us about the importance of fellowship, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I mean, these four hobbits are all in high spirits, and it's because they're with each other and with their friend Frodo. And of course, the old Wynyards, that can't hurt.
Right.
But, so I do want to kind of point that out, that the importance of fellowship certainly is an element that we see here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they toasted Bilbo's birthday, drank his health and Frodo's. And then we do get, though we're not officially reading it, that Frodo's party was over and Gandalf had not come.
Once again.
So, yeah.
Still watching the door. Gandalf
Exactly.
still isn't here.
Now, he was supposed to leave on this day. This was the day that he had made up his mind to leave, on his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Not after his birthday, on his birthday. It might have been better if he left on his birthday. I'm just saying. But,
right.
in terms of how the rest of the journey goes. But
yeah,
we are going to go ahead and pick up the next day here, and I'm going to go ahead and read this. Frodo was restless and anxious, listening in vain for a sound of Gandalf. He decided to wait until nightfall. After that, if Gandalf wanted him urgently, he would go to Crickhollow, and might even get there first, for Frodo was going on foot. His plan, for pleasure and a last look at the Shire as much as any other reason, was to walk from Hobbiton to Bucklebury Ferry, taking it fairly easy. I shall get myself a bit into training, too, he said, looking at himself in a dusty mirror in the half-empty hall. He had not done any strenuous walking for a long time, and the reflection looked rather flabby, he thought. So sad. So sad that Frodo hasn't learned, don't look in the mirror, man. You're 50
right.
now. You're 50.
Right.
Stop looking in the mirror.
He should have stopped that probably 10 years earlier.
Really?
If my experience is.
Yeah, that's probably true. Stop, certainly at 45. Stop looking in the mirror, man. Just trust me.
Winnie the Pooh still looks in the mirror, though. Oh, bother.
There we go. Thank you, because I can't do it.
I'm feeling flabby. I shall get myself a bit into training.
Oh, my goodness. That's well done, sir. All right. And back to the text before we get too far away. I love this part. I mean, I know there's not, it's not like they come in and there's another gift of spoons or anything like that. That would have been brilliant. But I kind of like this moment. I actually do. After lunch, the Sackville Bagginses, Lobelia and her sandy-haired son Lotho, turned up, much to Frodo's annoyance. "Ours at last," said Lobelia as she stepped inside. It was not polite, nor strictly true, for the sale of Bag End did not take effect until midnight. But Lobelia can perhaps be forgiven. She had been obliged to wait about 77 years longer for Bag End than she once hoped, and she was now 100 years old. Anyway, she had come to see that nothing she had paid for had been carried off, and she wanted the keys.
They're so classy, the Sackville Bagginses, aren't they?
They really are. But you know what? Given what we know about Lobelia at the end of the book, I actually like this moment. There's something. It's a setup. This moment is a setup for that moment, and
yeah, I think so.
Lobelia turns out to be this. I love her story. It's a very short story.
She has a great redemption at the end.
She sure does.
Yeah.
And I can't blame her. She really wanted this place for a long time. I mean, I didn't realize she was so young. She was only 23. She was barely out of her tweens when they thought they were going to get this house after Bilbo's disappearance.
So they thought they were probably newlyweds. They thought this was going to be their house. They were going to be set up for life. And
they were all set. Because of course it would have come with all the lands that they owned and were letting out to the folks on Bagshot Row.
I'm still not that sympathetic. I mean, I thought she ends up in a good place, but Lotho is still...
Yeah, and Lotho does not end up in a good place.
No, he does not.
In my belly.
This is... Oh, man. That's horrible. Oh.
There's your Moana
Worm
reference.
tongue.
Right? In my belly.
That's horrible.
Oh, that was really awful.
That was, but delightful. I liked it.
It was, yeah.
No, it's just walking in there like, oh, ours at last. It's just so rude.
It really is terribly rude, isn't it?
Petty. It's petty villainy is what it is.
It really
the Bagginses are like the first villains we get in this book, and they're just ridiculous. But
I love the Shire villains, though. The Sackville Baggins, the Ted Sandymans. I mean, they're just like you said, petty. There's a smallness to them
there is, yes. And I wonder if it's done as a contrast with the real villainy. We're going to see the real evil. We are going to see
true
in this
villainy.
book.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I do love. We're not going to read it, but I'm going to read it. Frodo did not offer her any tea.
It's great.
Is that just the most
awesome.
cool line right there? Oh,
That's great, yeah.
I do love that. Well, because, of course, he has his own tea with Pippin and Sam, and everybody knows that Sam's going to be going with him to help him out.
And after they had their tea, they left the washing up for Lobelia.
Of course, don't
leave her a sink full of dirty dishes. That's what you do.
Yeah, that's exactly what you do.
That's how I always sell my houses. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you can't do that if you're renting because you might not get your security deposit back. But by golly, I'm not cleaning that mess up.
Nope.
You bought this house. It includes the mess that's in the sink.
That's right. All of our various bacterias convey.
That's right. Absolutely. You can come in and disinfect this house because heaven knows I'll be doing that to the house I'm moving into.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, goodness. Well, all right. So I'm going to have you pick up here about the sky was clear, and we're going to talk about a decision that Frodo made that, well, maybe he should have made a different decision. But before we get to that, I wanted to touch real quickly the line right before that. I didn't mark it for reading, but it needs to be mentioned. Frodo half expected to see Gandalf come striding up through the dusk. Again, that constant, like you said, over and over. Frodo is really anxious. He's really expecting Gandalf.
Yeah.
Any moment now, and it's just not happening.
Yeah. And it's almost like he believes that he cannot possibly start on this journey without Gandalf. He really believes that Gandalf will find a way to show up before it's time for him to leave.
Yeah.
And it's the first of many hard realities for him, I think.
It is. It is.
And obviously we know Gandalf wanted to come. But
So he would have liked to have been there. Certainly better than the alternative.
Right. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and read from there.
Okay.
The sky was clear, and the stars were growing bright. "It's going to be a fine night," he said aloud. "That's good for a beginning. I feel like walking. I can't bear any more hanging about. I'm going to start, and Gandalf must follow me." He turned to go back, and then stopped, for he heard voices just round the corner by the end of Bagshot Row. One voice was certainly the old gaffer's. The other was strange, and somehow unpleasant. He could not make out what it said, but he heard the gaffer's answers, which were rather shrill. The old man seemed put out. "No, Mr. Baggins is gone away. Went this morning, and my son went with him. Anyway, all his stuff went. Yes, sold out and gone, I tell 'ee. Why? Why, it's none of my business or yours. Where to? That ain't no secret. He's moved to Bucklebury or some such place away down yonder. Yes, it is a tidy way. I've never been so far myself. They're queer folks in Buckland. No, I can't give no message. Good night to you." Footsteps went away down the hill. Frodo wondered vaguely why the fact that they did not come on up the hill seemed a great relief. "I'm sick of questions and curiosity about my doings, I suppose," he thought. "What an inquisitive lot they all are." He had half a mind to go and ask the gaffer who the inquirer was, but he thought better, or worse of it, and turned and walked quickly back to Bag End.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good to have a little more knowledge, a little more information. This would have been
great knowledge to have to find out more about who this inquisitive person is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're certainly going to find out very soon.
Yeah. And I love that Tolkien turns that phrase, thought better of it, and he puts, or worse.
Yeah.
Telling us that he really did make the wrong decision. Wow.
Mm-hmm. So Frodo's decision to leave, at the beginning of that reading, he's going to start. He realizes now, I've got to go. I've got to set out. Mm-hmm. That's significant. He's not going to wait anymore. He's finally going to do it. But
can't wait any longer. It's time to go. Yeah. Gandalf will catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He should have made that decision a little while ago, probably yesterday. Yeah. But, it's good enough. I am curious. Do you think that the gaffer knew that Baggins was still around? Or did he really think that he and Sam had already left this morning? Because this is now the night.
That's a good question.
Was he covering for him?
We have to purely speculate. I
don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a question.
I don't know.
That's really all it is.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I also like this part at the end of his little dialogue with the Black Rider when he says, "No, I can't give no message." Did the Black Rider really ask him, "If you see him, would you tell him I stopped by?" I know that's kind of my own Goliath voice. I'm sorry, but
it's all right. It works.
Really, what are you going to do? It's
I know, right?
I don't want a message given to him. I want to find him.
Right.
But anyway,
page me if you find him,
dude. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to be picking up immediately after that, and we'll talk
right.
about these final preparations. Pippin was sitting on his pack in the porch. Sam was not there. Frodo stepped inside the dark door. "Sam," he called. "Sam, time!" "Coming, sir," came the answer from far within, followed soon by Sam himself, wiping his mouth. He had been saying farewell to the beer barrel in the cellar.
That's how you do it. That's
the way
the only way to do it.
That's exactly right. Just straight up. I mean,
Yep.
"All aboard, Sam," said Frodo. "Yes, sir. I'll last for a bit now, sir." All
Good
right.
thing he's not driving.
Seriously. Frodo shut and locked the round door and gave the key to Sam. "Run down with this to your home, Sam," he said. "Then cut along the row and meet us as quick as you can at the gate in the lane beyond the meadows. We are not going through the village tonight. Too many ears pricking and eyes prying." Sam ran off at full speed. "Well, now, we're off at last," said Frodo. They shouldered their packs and took up their sticks and walked round the corner to the west side of Bag End. "Goodbye," said Frodo, looking at the dark blank windows. He waved his hand, and then turned and, following Bilbo if he had known it, hurried after Peregrine down the garden path. They jumped over the low place in the hedge at the bottom and took to the fields, passing into the darkness like a rustle in the grasses. Well, so there's the answer to the trivia question that nobody's ever asked. But I mean, if somebody were to say, what hobbit, if any, accompanied Frodo when he first left Bag End? The Quest of the Ring. 9 out of 10 people are going to tell you Sam, right? Or Sam, Merry, and Pippin or something.
Right.
Who's going to say just Pippin?
Who's going to say it was just Pippin just for those first few steps? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's just
it's because it's blink and you miss it. Because obviously he leaves Bag End with them, but then Frodo and Pippin set off, and then Sam appears again in the next paragraph. It's a very short time, I guess, but
it is a very short time. I mean, they do show up, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But in the meantime, you have a little bit that you'd pulled from the Reader's Guide, huh?
Yeah, I did, and I pulled this because Hammond and Scull don't often quote themselves.
No, that's true.
But there's a wonderful little note here that I thought was great because. I think a lot of people, we've all heard this criticism of Tolkien. Maybe some of us have even said it. The fact that it takes a really long time to get Frodo off on his quest.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are, we're into the 3rd chapter now, and he's just finally leaving his door.
Yeah.
Well, Hammond and Scull, after observing that some have criticized Tolkien for taking so long to launch Frodo on his quest, they cite an article that Wayne Hammond wrote for the journal Mythlore way back in 1987, where he says, and I think rightly, he says, if Tolkien had hurried Frodo and his companions into adventure, we would not appreciate so well the Arcadia, and that's a word meaning basically the idyllic paradise, the harmony with nature, that Frodo is willing to give up for the sake of his people. Proceeding at the author's deliberately casual pace, we grow to love the Shire as we never loved Bag End in The Hobbit, having visited there so briefly before Bilbo was hurried away.
And that really is true. I mean, we just commented on that. Everything from that beautiful line about the honey and the combs and the tall corn, and there's so much beauty in the Shire, and we're going to see it even more in the rest of this chapter that we didn't get to see in The Hobbit. That I think really does make us identify more with Frodo here. That helps us understand his love for and desire to protect the Shire. That we didn't really have with Bag End and The Hobbit. Yeah.
And I think it kind of raises the stakes in a way, too, because we understand what he's given up. We understand what he sacrificed.
Yeah. That was a good word choice for Hammond to use, Arcadia.
Arcadia, that's a really cool word.
Yeah. Did I ever tell you I actually used to live in Arcadia, California?
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I grew up there. That was where elementary school, junior high. Yeah. So.
Did I tell you I once had an Arcadia album on vinyl?
No, I did not know that either.
I
will add, by the way, that Arcadia, as lovely as it is, and to anybody who's listening from that area, they know, but it is no idyllic paradise, just to be clear. The Arboretum's there, though, and that's kind of idyllic.
Oh, there's an Arboretum there? We have an Arboretum here.
That's the L.A. County Arboretum, which is in Arcadia.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you don't remember the 80s band Arcadia.
I vaguely remember there being one. I don't remember the band themselves, no.
I think they were like a side project of a couple of guys from Duran Duran, and I had that on.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah. Now I remember that.
You never
yeah.
expected that one to come out, but
No,
there you go.
I did not. I did not expect that. That's actually been one of the best things about this podcast is so many unexpected things.
Yes. Parties,
Yeah.
references.
Yeah.
You
It's
know.
been fun. All right. That makes it sound like it's coming to an end. It's been fun. No, we still have
It's been fun, folks, but after 103 episodes, we're hanging it up.
We're calling it.
We're calling it right here at the beginning of Three's Company.
I'm going to pack my backpack and get my stick, and I'm just going.
I'm going to say goodbye to the beer.
Sean's going to have to catch up to me when he wants to.
Yep.
I do love that they're walking quite literally in Bilbo's footsteps. I think that's just a wonderful little touch.
That is super cool. Yeah.
So,
because that's what Frodo wanted to do.
Yeah, that's exactly what he wanted.
And that kind of tells us that this is how it's meant to be. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do by leaving, even though he's going to end up in a very different place. He's starting out right in Bilbo's footsteps. That's so.
Of course, at the very end, he ends up in the same place. I love that.
Well, that's true. That's true too, but not quite back again. But,
no, not quite.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. So we're going to go ahead and get to the last reading of this chapter, or not of this chapter, but of this episode. But before we do, I wanted to talk a little bit about, well, kind of the gag that we had at the beginning about my feeling like I'd had all the heaviest stuff comes from this part that we're not going to read, but it reminds us of just how hard Sam works. When he says my packet is quite light, the narrator tells us that he said that stoutly and untruthfully.
I love that. Yeah.
He's of course willing to do whatever it takes to
do anything.
To make Frodo comfortable. He wants to do anything he can to lessen his burden.
Yeah. It's classic Sam, and then I would say, Pippin's snark is classic Pippin.
Oh, totally classic Pippin.
And what I love is, he'll feel the weight less when he's walked off some of his own. Great.
That comes from the guy who's 20 years younger.
Yeah, right.
I'd expect that from somebody 20 years younger who's going to give me grief.
And what's cool is that, we saw Merry kind of, throw some jabs at Frodo too. And they're both jokesters, Merry and Pippin are. But
they are.
They each have a different comedic style, don't they?
They do. We'll see more of that as we develop.
Yeah, Mary's drier and wittier. Pippin's a little bit more in your face about it. It's just
Pippin
really
is.
funny.
You're right. Pippin is very in your face, and Mary is very sarcastic. Yeah. Wonderful stuff. Frodo is saying, "I'll be as thin as a willow wand before I get to Buckland." It made me think of there's a moment when he says something about I shall be a wraith.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think
that's
it was
after they meet Aragorn. Yeah.
Yeah, and Aragorn's like, dude, don't even joke about that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it made me think of that line for some reason.
Well, Frodo's making some kind of snide remark about, not snide, that's not the right word, but some kind of just like offhand comment about losing weight. And here it's very, it's very light, it's casual, it's just a funny thing to say. He says something very similar later on, and it is a very different, a very different situation. So I think that's a good call out.
Yeah, it was just an interesting little comparison. We'll catch that again when he says that. But in the meantime, I'm going to have you read the last reading of. Well, I'm sorry. Did I call it the last?
You did, but it's
not the last though. There is one more. See, I messed that up. So I'm going to have you read the next to last. I think earlier I'd said last. I'm going to have you read the next to last passage for tonight, if you could.
Okay. For a short way, they followed the lane westwards. Then, leaving it, they turned left and took quietly to the fields again. They went in single file, along hedgerows and the borders of coppices, and night fell dark about them. In their dark cloaks, they were as invisible as if they all had magic rings. Since they were all hobbits and were trying to be silent, they made no noise that even hobbits would hear. Even the wild things in the fields and woods hardly noticed their passing. After some time they crossed the water west of Hobbiton by a narrow plank bridge. The stream was there no more than a winding black ribbon, bordered with leaning alder trees. A mile or two further south they hastily crossed the great road from the Brandywine Bridge. They were now in the Tookland, and bending southeastwards they made for the green hill country. As they began to climb its first slopes, they looked back, and saw the lamps in Hobbiton far off, twinkling in the gentle valley of the water. Soon it disappeared in the folds of the darkened land, and was followed by Bywater beside its grey pool. When the light of the last farm was far behind, peeping among the trees, Frodo turned and waved a hand in farewell. "I wonder if I shall ever look down into that valley again," he said quietly.
he's said a lot of that lately, hasn't he? He's very
Yeah.
kind of melancholy.
Yeah.
I think we'll see that in Conspiracy Unmasked when they kind of point out, dude, you've been saying some things that anybody who's paying attention will know.
Yeah, that you're
that
you're not ever coming back here. You can totally
Yeah.
see through that. Yeah. He's like very nostalgic, very nostalgic for the Shire already, even though he's still there. And melancholy is a really good word too.
That makes me think actually of a talk that I heard when I was at Oxenmoot. It was on
Okay.
prospective nostalgia. It was on this idea that, you would be looking forward, not in a positive sense necessarily, but that you'd be looking forward in time, anticipating a coming loss rather than looking back at a loss that took place.
Oh, interesting.
And that's kind of what we're seeing Frodo do here, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. He's anticipating, and again, not anticipating in the positive sense that we usually use that word, but he knows that this loss is coming, and he's already reflecting on that loss, even though it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
That's a really good catch. I've not heard of that concept before.
Well, it was an interesting talk. There were so many interesting talks, but this one just happened to, prompt my memory. Lots and lots of good ones.
That's very cool.
We'll have to remember that when we get to Tolkien 2019.
Obviously, we're a little excited about that, folks.
Yeah.
No, I think melancholy is a good word for it. I always think of this gravitas that Frodo has. He has, you talk about prospective nostalgia, and I couldn't see Bilbo having prospective nostalgia for anything.
Oh,
Bilbo
no.
didn't know what he had until it was gone, and Frodo has this moment of awareness of what he's about to leave behind. He's just so much wiser than Bilbo was when he started out. And he has
the ability to see farther. I think Bilbo is very, not so much short-sighted, but he didn't. Well, yeah, I guess short-sighted really is a better way to put it. But he didn't think ahead as far as Frodo does.
Yeah,
Frodo is much more wise is a good way of putting it.
Foresight,
but he does have that sense of
he has a quality,
foresight,
and it kind of makes him the perfect character to go on this quest, doesn't it? Because this is a long game quest. This is going on a long quest for a long-term goal, and there's going to be tremendous sacrifice associated with it. Bilbo, as we saw earlier, Bilbo went to find a treasure. Frodo goes to lose one, and Bilbo's adventure is much more has a much more tangible goal, I guess, at the end of it.
Oh yeah.
And so you would expect him to embrace that quest, I guess, even being short-sighted. Sure. Whereas it takes somebody with a little bit more wisdom like Frodo to do something like he's about to do.
Yeah, I think so. So let's go back to the beginning of that passage. I love this line about the hedgerows and the borders of coppices.
Yeah.
Now, we don't really have a lot of hedgerows here in the States, certainly not here in California, at least. I imagine maybe there are some states where hedgerows are more common. Have you ever lived in a place where hedgerows
not. I mean, I've
okay.
seen them in pictures. I know what they are, but
you
know
what they look like.
A place where they're common.
Right. Coppices is a word that I actually had to look up because I didn't, or not this time around, but when I was reading the book, maybe for the 10th time when I was in college, I decided I better figure out what a coppice is. But it's an area of woodland when the trees are periodically cut back to ground level. So it's a regularly harvested woodland.
Oh, okay.
So it's where people would get their
wood from,
their firewood. Okay. Yeah.
It's interesting that these are both examples of vegetation that has been civilized,
Exactly.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Very, very Shire-like. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
And then, of course, their invisibility, the fact that they made no noise that even hobbits would hear. The wild creatures didn't even notice them. I thought that was interesting. We get our first mention of, and we're going to see several different kinds of trees, but we get the first mention of an actual tree type, in this case, the alder trees. It is not the larch.
I'm so glad you went there, because I was about to say something about how to recognize different types of trees from quite a long way away.
But we do see the alder trees. I love the beautiful description of this journey, this first few miles of the journey.
Well,
crossing the road and in the Tuchlands.
It's that Arcadia that Hammond and Scull talked about.
It is, isn't it?
That's what connects you with the Shire. That's what allows you to see what Frodo is going to leave behind. Yeah.
Yeah. Green Hill Country. Is there a more beautiful name for an
I
area
know,
than that?
right?
I don't know. I want to live in Green
Yeah.
Hill Country.
Well, I live very close to Texas Hill Country.
Texas Hill Country.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't sound green to me.
It is.
But it might be.
It is,
it?
yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just pictured Texas as most people picture it probably, which is a lot of, brown.
Desert, yeah.
Yeah.
West of here is a lot like that. But yeah, here it's really green, and we've got these beautiful rolling hills, just west of where
lovely.
I live, and it's incredible.
Well, I'll have to see that when I come out for
Texmoot. Yes, you will.
Yeah, another moot.
I'm not sure if we'll have time for a leisure drive out to Fredericksburg or anything like that, but you'll see something. No. Just look out your window as you fly in.
There you go. That's all I'm going to do. After the melancholy comment about the valley, they continue walking, and though we're not going to read the next couple of paragraphs, it's worth mentioning again that we get more trees, thin-clad birches. Then they get their frugal supper, parentheses, for hobbits, which tells me it was probably a pretty substantial meal.
Quite extravagant, I can imagine.
Yeah, as extravagant as they could have in their packs.
Right, yep.
Well, then we get some unnamed trees, the tall trees that rustled their dry leaves in the night.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of trees. We're going to see more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. Just, again, beautiful sensory description. I always notice when Tolkien pauses, or slows down, I should say, to take time to observe all these details. It's really just beautiful stuff.
It is. And I do wish, this is the time when I wish we could read everything.
Yeah.
There's not much to discuss. At least not from my perspective. I'm sure that Corey Olsen could pull a ton out of this. I know he has. Yeah. And maybe we should listen to that, except that then if we did, I'd feel like we have to kind of emulate that, and I don't want to go there.
Right. Agreed. Yeah.
We're not him. So
no. I like what we've got here. I think it's what we do here is
I do too.
Just is our speed.
It really is our speed. This notion, I mean, just the descriptions that we get here. They plundered into a deeply cloven track. They talked or hummed a tune softly together, marched in silence.
You see you almost see the montage, don't you?
You really do.
I can see a montage of them walking.
I can see these. Yeah, exactly. And I can see the thin-clad birches. I can see them sitting down for supper. I can see. I love the scene that you described in your reading, where they turned around and they could see the lamps and hobbits and far off in the gentle valley.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm just imagining what that looks like in a world where the only artificial lights are going to be, torches and
candles,
some sort of candles and things. You're not going to see street lights. You're not going to see the kind of artificial light that we have now.
Right.
And just how stunningly beautiful and simple and peaceful that would be.
You're not kidding.
And it makes me want to be there so badly.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, you really do.
It's beautiful.
That's a good, that is a place that's a picture I would love to see. And I'm not sure that I've seen any artist
at night
tackle that scene, like the Shire at night, or this particular shot.
Yeah, this scene where they're looking back at Hobbiton.
Yeah.
And then you can also see Bywater.
Yeah.
Beside its gray pool.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's a scene I'd love to see somebody do.
Clear, cool, and starry, but smoke lit.
Any artists out there listening? Want to try it?
There you go.
We'd love to see it.
Give it a go. We'll take a look. I'm going to go ahead and read our last reading here. Now, Pippin has said, "Look, guys, it is late. Can we please get some sleep?" I love it. He's the one giving Frodo a bunch of grief for
being out of shape. Yeah,
exactly. But he's the one who says, "I'm the one who's about to fall asleep."
And he's supposed to be like in the prime of his,
he's the youngest
young
one.
adult life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he should be able to stay up all night partying, but nope.
Partying. Well, I'm sure if it was just drinking ale, he could do that all night. But walking all the way across the Shire, not so much. So they are going to go ahead and find some rest. And I'm going to pick up there with Sam. "The wind's in the west," said Sam. "If we get to the other side of this hill, we shall find a spot that's sheltered and snug enough, sir. There's a dry firwood just ahead, if I remember rightly." Sam knew the land well within 20 miles of Hobbiton, but that was the limit of his geography. Just over the top of the hill, they came on a patch of firwood. Leaving the road, they went into the deep, resin-scented darkness of the trees. Man, that's a beautiful. As I'm reading this aloud, I'm picking up even more. But Let me reread that since I interrupted myself. Leaving the road, they went into the deep, resin-scented darkness of the trees and gathered dead sticks and cones to make a fire. Soon they had a merry crackle of flame at the foot of a large fir tree, and they sat round it for a while until they began to nod. Then, each in an angle of the great tree's roots, they curled up in their cloaks and blankets and were soon fast asleep. They set no watch. Even Frodo feared no danger yet, for they were still in the heart of the Shire. A few creatures came and looked at them when the fire had died away. A fox, passing through the wood on business of his own, stopped several minutes and sniffed. Hobbits, he thought. Well, what next? I've heard of strange doings in this land, but I've seldom heard of a hobbit sleeping out of doors under a tree. 3 of them. There's something mighty queer behind this. He was quite right, but he never found out any more about it. And now we know. Now we know. What does the fox say?
Oh, well done. Well done.
Dude, I've been waiting months for that line. Are you kidding me? Bing, 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 bing. Yeah. No, he doesn't say that. He says hobbits. Well, what next?
Man. Wow.
Oh, man.
Well, he thinks hobbits. He doesn't speak it out loud.
You're right.
He thinks
You're right.
hobbits. Well, what next? Maybe
That's
what
a very
comes
good point.
out is
Could be bing, 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 bing. Well, when translated, that means.
I listened to that
man.
song every single night when my son was a newborn.
Did you really?
Every single night. He loved it.
I listened to it once and was done. I couldn't.
I loved it before he was born. I thought it was hilarious. It was with.
Oh, it is hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. The video makes it. I mean,
it does. But then when my son was born, that was one of the things that would calm him down. So I don't know how.
That calmed him down. That is funny.
Yeah.
That is funny. Maybe
Yep.
he's like, I must find sleep. I must escape consciousness. Consciousness is awareness of this song. I must find sleep.
Right. Or yeah, exactly. It's just like
I want to be blissfully
I'll calm
unaware
down
of this
so they
song.
just stop playing the song. Yeah. Great stuff. We've got a book and
It
everything.
really is. That is hilarious. Yeah, the description of this land, you can smell it, can't you? The resin-scented
the
darkness.
resin-scented darkness. There's
It
more
smells
of it.
like summer camp, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, with the pine tree. I mean, I don't know about you, but where I live in California, you go to the mountains for summer camp, and it's all pine forests, and you totally get that resin-scented, trees and the pine cones. And
I mean, to me,
I can smell the fire.
To me, I think of like Christmas tree farms because
Yes.
go to those, and those are probably a little bit sparser because they're actually farmed in neat little rows as opposed to growing naturally.
Well, right.
But
Forest,
just
right.
that smell that just surrounds you.
That's a beautiful smell. And then the fire and the crackle, you can hear that, the sound of the pops and the clicks as the fire and the little packets of resin and the pine cones and the leaves or the needles. I'm sure they got
all
piles
those
of needles.
terpenes. We read about the different chemicals
Terpenes,
that
that's
explode.
right. That is what
when
it
we
is.
did this
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
It exploded.
And he exploded.
One of the best
That's
lines.
great. I have a question for you. This is just kind of a random spitball question. The winds.
Is it at least related to Tolkien?
No. Of course it is. Yes, it is. The winds in the west, said Sam. Do you think that might be like a sign of a good omen?
An
like
omen?
A friendly
Yeah.
wind blowing from the direction of Valinor?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I don't know that it helps them directly, but it's a mention of the West. And anytime there's a mention of the West, it does seem to be a good thing.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know if there's
totally
much,
speculative, but I'll go there.
I don't know if there's much there, but I just like it. It's a nice reminder of of the hope that lies in the West.
It's certainly at least the absence of, the winds coming from the east, which is never
true.
good.
That is true.
Yeah. So it's at least that.
And I like that Sam is the one to observe it.
I do too.
He may not know much about geography, but he pays attention to nature.
Yeah, but he knows a lot about geography in that small
area. Yeah, that's what I mean. He's reaching the limit of his geography pretty soon. So.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Pretty soon he's going to say, "This is the farthest I've ever been." No, he never says that.
Not in the book.
Just to be clear. But he
the
knew the
sentiment
land
is
well.
true. Yeah.
It is true. And he did know there's a dry fir wood just ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he remembered rightly. And so they're able to not only start a fire and get warm and spend some time just enjoying that beauty, but they're able to find a place to sleep in a big fir tree.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting. Frodo doesn't sit a watch. I mean, again, would I? No.
Not so close to your home. No. Yeah.
No.
They're still
Might
still
he?
home.
Had he known about the Black Rider?
Probably. Oh, yeah. If he had actually gone and talked to the gaffer, he might have done differently. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not that it would have mattered. This night, a Black Rider didn't come upon them or anything, but
Right.
It's just an interesting thought.
Well, it's an interesting observation of how comfortable they feel. We talked so much about comfort in The Hobbit, and it's not as much of a theme here, but here we do see that they feel very comfortable. They're at home. They don't see any reason to set a watch.
No, that's true. So is this a fourth wall break here? This sort of the narrator telling us what the fox thinks?
I don't know.
It's definitely more stylistically in the tone of The Hobbit, that's for sure.
It is definitely that. I don't know if it's quite a fourth wall break because the narrator's not directly addressing us, is he?
That's true.
But it is weird. and I say that in the best way possible. I love the sentient fox.
Oh, I love it. I do.
I think it's so much fun. It's just kind of it's a sign to me that nature itself is observing what's going on, and it's weird. It's odd to nature itself. The fact that these hobbits are out.
That's a very good point.
And it's just fun. We don't get many of these in Lord of the Rings.
No, we don't. By the way, I was just thinking about this. You mentioned that he only thought it, that the fox didn't speak. He only thought it.
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking for his sake, that's probably a good thing, because if it spoke, it could only speak 2 more times before its death.
Aw. And now I'm sad because I'm thinking about
Huon. Don't be sad. Huon did what he did and died a hero's death. So
he was sent out west. He's chasing rabbits out in Valinor.
Yep. Chasing very large rabbits, Rosgabel rabbits, I'm sure.
Oh,
Orome.
Nice.
Oh, goodness. Well, this has been a wonderful start to the chapter. I'm looking forward to more. But for now, that wraps it up for the first part of Three is Company. Now, join us again next week when we have not 1, but 2 creepy encounters with Black Riders.
Ooh, not to mention a nice piece of Hobbit poetry. But before we wrap up, we want to take a minute to remind you about the Fellowship of the Podcast. That's our family of supporters over at Patreon. Now, we are getting closer to our next goal of setting up a Discord server, which is going to give our patrons a very entertaining show as they listen in live during a recording.
Entertaining might have air quotes around it, just be clear.
Plenty of opportunity to laugh at us, not with us, at our slip-ups and our bad jokes. Not to mention get a sneak peek at an upcoming episode.
And we are really getting closer to that goal. In fact, I'd hazard a guess that I'll probably be spending time over our Christmas break getting that server set up and all the details worked out.
Yay.
Our patrons will certainly enjoy that. So be sure to visit patreon.com/prancingponypod. When you join at the Gift of Gondor level or higher, you're going to get exclusive access to content like a full-length bonus episode each quarter and short postscripts to each of our chapter-based episodes.
There's another way you can help us too. Check out the official library pages at our website, theprancingponypodcast.com, where we've put together a set of links for our listeners to all the Tolkien books we've ever mentioned on the show. You can also give us a hand by posting a review on iTunes. That increases our visibility, which means more new listeners, more great questions for Barliman, more discussion on our social media channels, and a more vibrant Tolkien community.
Absolutely. And don't forget to share us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, wherever you hang out and might find Tolkien fans. Please tell them about our show. Now, before we move on to Barliman's Bag, we want to remind you about the fact that pretty soon, as far as podcast time is concerned, we will be coming up on our 11th episode, and we're still planning on celebrating that with an episode of special magnificence.
And while we would love to invite all of you, giving presents to all and sundry, we don't have a draft of cooks ready to go, so instead we came up with a different way for you to participate in our little celebration.
That's right, and in fact, we literally won't be able to celebrate without you. What we want to do is replay our top moments from our first 100 or so episodes, along with some director's commentary. Now, you'll have to forgive us for not knowing exactly what those top moments are, and that is where you come in.
So here's what we want you to do. We want you to remember your favorite Prancing Pony podcast moments and send us an email that includes some important information so we can find it. The episode number, the start and end time of the segment that you'd like us to replay, and what you particularly enjoyed about it, whether it was something serious or a chat with a guest or some awful joke. It's all fair play for our 11th episode.
That's right. So if you wanted the moment that we first mocked the Vanyar with OMG Valar, OMG Manwë, you would tell us episode 13 about the hour 41 mark. See, with somewhere around 200 hours of content, there is just no way we can make these selections ourselves, so we're going to have to crowdsource this party.
That's right, and you will get a shout-out if your segment is selected. So get listening and start sending us those timestamps. You've only got 3 weeks left until December 9th to get your selections in. That'll give us time to curate your selections, prepare our commentary, and fit the content into an episode-length recording before it airs early in the new year.
Now, please don't delay, folks. This party of special magnificence is only going to work with your help.
And one last thing before we move on to Barliman's Bag. You may remember our big announcement back in episode 100 that we're going to be going to Tolkien 2019 in Birmingham, and we're going to be recording a live episode.
Yep.
Well, we've launched the sale of some newly designed t-shirts and hoodies to help cover those costs.
That's right, and they are really nice shirts, too. We've got them available in a range of prices and colors, so you're sure to be able to find what you'd like. Now, Schrodinger's Dwarves may be our most fun design yet, so be sure to order yours soon.
Absolutely. But folks, keep in mind, they're only available for a limited time. In order to make sure folks get their t-shirts and their hoodies on time for Christmas, we have to close the campaign on December 2nd at 11:59 Eastern Standard Time. So please be sure to get on our social media for links to the new gear.
Now, with that, it's time to see what old Barliman has in the mailbag for us. Sean?
Well, now that our heroes are on their journey, I guess it seems like a good time to talk about Sauron, the main villain of this book. In our last episode, we talked a bit about the ring, and that gave us a chance to talk about what that represents. Well, today we've got some questions about Sauron himself and what exactly his motivation is in all of this.
It's a rock monster. It doesn't have motivation.
See, that's your problem. You were never serious about the craft.
There's your Galaxy Quest reference,
folks. Galaxy Quest for the day. It is worth noting that for a character who's close to being the embodiment of evil, at least within the context of this book, we really don't know much about Sauron. Not himself, and...
he's just this guy,
Sauron is just this guy. And for readers who have read the Silmarillion and know about Morgoth, the real embodiment of evil in Middle-earth, I think it's a reasonable question to ask, well, what exactly is Sauron aiming for in the Third Age, and how does that fit in with the designs of his former master Morgoth, who's currently doing an extended stint in Iluvatar's maximum security prison out in Philly?
Supermax.
Yep. So, a couple of questions about this today. Colson C. in North Carolina asked, was Sauron's end goal after Melkor was defeated at the end of the First Age to prepare the world for the Dagor Dagorath? Now, that's the final battle that's mentioned in the early drafts of Tolkien's Legendarium. To prepare the world for that and the return of his master? Or was he just out to conquer the world for himself? And if it was just for himself, wouldn't Melkor be enraged when he would return for the Dagor Dagorath, only to find his servant had tried to supplant him?
Maybe. David R. in Christchurch, New Zealand, sent us a few questions back a few months. David, I'm sorry we're going to have to hold off on some of your questions, but one of them was almost exactly what Colson asked, so we're going to include that with it. So here's the way David asked that question. Where does Sauron's loyalty lie? Is he out for himself, or is he still allied to Melkor? We know that in the final battle, Melkor will reemerge as number one villain. It would be a bit embarrassing to Sauron to explain to him what he was trying to achieve behind his back. Sauron also builds a temple to Melkor on Numenor. I think David must have brought that up to suggest that maybe Sauron is still being loyal to Melkor.
Yeah, I think so. Well, and the good news is, believe it or not, Tolkien actually gives us some answers to this question of Sauron's loyalty in Morgoth's Ring. So in the last episode, when we were talking about Sauron's Ring, we referenced an essay called Notes on Motives in the Silmarillion, which is in this volume, and it contains some really interesting stuff about Sauron and Morgoth and like what made each of them tick. And there's a lot there. We're not going to have time to go into it all, but we're going to cover the highlights that are relevant to this question. So last time we talked about the difference between Morgoth disseminating his power throughout all of Arda to spread corruption versus Sauron concentrating his power within the One Ring to use that to dominate. And I think that really is the starting point to understand how Sauron and Morgoth were different as Dark Lords. Tolkien begins this essay that I'm talking about with a quick reminder of how Morgoth disseminated his power in an effort to corrupt and thus dominate the matter of Arda itself, to basically to turn Iluvatar's creation into his own. And then Tolkien says, Sauron, however, inherited the corruption of Arda and only spent his much more limited power on the rings. for it was the creatures of earth, in their minds and wills, that he desired to dominate. In this way, Sauron was also wiser than Melkor Morgoth. Sauron was not a beginner of discord, and he probably knew more of the music than did Melkor, whose mind had always been filled with his own plans and devices, and gave little attention to other things.
Man, that was interesting. Now, further on, Tolkien describes Morgoth's philosophy as sheer nihilism, and negation is one ultimate object. Even left alone, he could only have gone raging on till all was leveled again into a formless chaos. Then he says, Sauron had never reached this stage of nihilistic madness. He did not object to the existence of the world, so long as he could do what he liked with it. He still had the relics of positive purposes that descended from the good of the nature in which he began. It had been his virtue, and therefore also the cause of his fall, and of his relapse, that he loved order and coordination, and disliked all confusion and wasteful friction. It was the apparent will and power of Melkor to effect his designs quickly and masterfully that had first attracted Sauron to him.
Man, that is brilliant, and it's
Isn't it?
It's a really fascinating, although chilling, breakdown of the difference between them. I mean, we really see Morgoth was a nihilist. He just wanted chaos and corruption. If Arda couldn't be his, he just wanted to destroy it.
That's right.
Sauron, on the other hand, he liked order, and I have to
He's
wonder.
Probably,
I think you're about to ask the same thing I'm about to ask. Like, what kind of work did he do for Aule, right? Like, did he?
That's kind of what I'm picturing. He's sorting through the tool chests, and
he was a project manager. He was a great project manager. Or maybe he did really ornate geometric patterns or something. Who knows?
Oh, see, I was just thinking, he's trying to
a paper pusher.
I'm picturing him making sure that all the 3/8 inch bolts are in one little drawer and all the 5/8 inch bolts are in another. And he's drawing the outlines of every little wrench that's hanging on the wall.
If that was my job, I would go evil. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I would go evil too, absolutely. But that's your order and coordination right there.
Right, yeah. But he didn't want to destroy Arda. He wanted it to be neat and tidy. He just wanted it to be neat and tidy and his. So it does seem very unlikely that he was preparing Arda for Melkor's return. I really think he was out for himself.
Oh, yeah. And Tolkien does say that this is a simplification of the situation. He couldn't serve Morgoth for so long, Tolkien's words were, without becoming infected by his lust for destruction. But it was always with this greater motive in mind of ruling and not destroying Arda. There's no doubt that he was out for himself.
Yeah.
In response to David's observation about the temple to Melkor in Númenor, yes, he did build that, but it was more to serve his own ends than it was really to exalt Melkor. I mean, Melkor he wasn't even aware that there would have been any worship going on because he was outside the doors of night.
The void.
He was out in the void. Like, there's nothing there. That's the void. Yep. So in that same essay, Tolkien writes, Sauron was not a sincere atheist. Of course he wasn't. I mean, as Tolkien points out earlier in the essay, he knew Eru. But he preached atheism because it weakened resistance to himself. His cunning motive is probably best expressed thus. To wean one of the God-fearing from their allegiance, it is best to propound another unseen object of allegiance and another hope of benefits. Propound to him a lord who will sanction what he desires and not forbid it. Sauron, apparently a defeated rival for world power, now a mere hostage, can hardly propound himself. But as the former servant and disciple of Melkor, the worship of Melkor will raise him from hostage to high priest.
Right. So he has the temple built, not to heap praise on the old boss, but because it puts him in the position of power he wants to be in. He has to exalt something else in order to win the Númenóreans over to worshiping it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also alluded to in letter number 183, which adds a little bit more insight into Sauron's motives. It says, the Eldar and the Númenóreans believed in the one, the true God, and held worship of any other person an abomination. Sauron desired to be a god king, and was held to be this by his servants.
Ooh.
And then later in a footnote, Tolkien points out that by the end of the Third Age, he claimed to be Morgoth returned.
Wow.
Now that is clearly something Sauron did to exalt his own power and not to win favor with his old master, claiming to be Morgoth. And so, yes, I would have to say, in response to the question both Coulson and David asked about whether Morgoth would be angry about all this and whether it would be an awkward reunion, yes, it would. And I, for one, would love to be there to see it.
Oh, man, so would I. I mean, far enough away to not get hit by the fireballs, but yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
My goodness, that's Sauron.
You did what?
What would he call him? He's not going to call him King Excellent, so I guess he is going to call him the Abhorred.
Yeah, probably. You are now abhorred to me.
Oh, goodness. Well, I think we have time for one more question from our old friend Maria in Serbia. She asks, and this is one you're going to love, do you think there is some kind of philological connection between Old Noakes of Bywater in the Fellowship of the Ring, and that's Noakes with an A, and the Master Cook Noakes, spelled without the A, from Smith of Wootton Major? Now, Sean, I know you love Smith, and I know you got word nerdery, so you want to take us home with this one?
Yes, I do, and that is actually my answer. Yes, Maria, I'm certain there is a connection. In Nomenclature of the Lord of the Rings, Tolkien explains the name Noakes, as in Noakes of Bywater, like this. Noakes, or Noakes, spelled both ways, is an English surname, derived probably from the not uncommon minor place name Noak, which he spells with or without the A, from early English Aten Oka, at the oak. Tolkien goes on to say that the name is, in the tale, unimportant, and this is true, at least for The Lord of the Rings, but Tom Shippey believes that the use of the name and its reference to oak trees is very important in Smith of Wootton Major. In fact, if you remember back in episodes 90 and 91, in which we talked to first Dr. Verlin Flieger in episode 90 and then Dr. Tom Shippey in episode 91, we asked both of them about that story, Smith of Wootton Major, and whether it should be seen as an allegory or not. Well, Shippey's position is that Smith is an allegory, and that actually is based heavily on the etymology of that name Noakes. And I'd love to go into that, but I think it's a topic for another day. But
yeah, I think that is.
The answer is there is definitely a connection.
Very cool. Well, I am sorry that we'll have to hold that off for another day, but we will eventually tackle Smith. But unfortunately, that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. So be sure to join us again next week when we wind our way towards Woodhall in the second part of Three is Company.
Thanks again for listening, and thank you for making our common room on Facebook such a fun place to spend time. We want all of you to be a part of this conversation, and it doesn't stop when the episode ends. See the comments, questions, corrections, and more on Facebook at the Prancing Pony Podcast, on Twitter at Prancing Pony Pod, and on Instagram at Prancing Pony Pod.
And a very special thank you to our patrons at the Kierdan's contribution tier. That's DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Emily in Texas, and Chad in Texas. Thank you so much.
Make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe to the show through iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, the thoughts of small woodland creatures to Bartleman at theprancingponypodcast.com. And we will try to get them into our next show. Well, however long we've had is still far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.